The pressure to look perfect and be perfect is exhausting and expensive on many levels. In the quest to live up to impossibly high beauty standards, we often squander an incredible amount of time, mental energy, and financial resources. I've found that our mental and physical health pay a huge price when we feel judged, rejected, and shamed if we are different from ridiculously idealized norms. When we look in the mirror, we often see ourselves through a lens of toxic comparison, a negative self-evaluation based on airbrushed images from social media, magazines, TV, and more. Although it's wonderful to want to look and feel our best, self-esteem and overall mental health take a huge hit when societal pressures result in self-doubt, shame, and self-loathing. The movements of body positivity and body neutrality are bringing much needed doses of compassion and acceptance into society. It's time for more empowering conversations about self-love and letting go of the shame-induced drive for perfection. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. I've suffered from body dysmorphia since I was a preteen. Both my parents are type A and very appearance focused. They constantly pressured me to eat less, exercise more, and get rid of my baby fat. I grew up being ashamed of my body, but I realize I'll never be a stick-thin person. I'm naturally curvy. I was diagnosed with bulimia nervosa and have more or less recovered, but I can't stop comparing myself to the model type people on social media. I feel like I've tried everything to get past this, so I wonder if you have any suggestions. And with that question as the focus of today's podcast, this is Dr. Carla Manly, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Manly, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Emily Lauren Dick, who will be sharing her considerable expertise on body image and the role shame plays in women's lives. Welcome to the podcast, Emily. It's such a joy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited. And before we dive into this truly important topic, could you tell our listeners a little bit about what makes you, you?
Absolutely. I am a published author of a book called Body Positive, a Guide to Loving Your Body. And I photographed the 75 women in the book. And it's really a beautiful introduction to body image. And I am also a creative marketer and really an activist who is passionate about body image, women's issues, and taming shame.
I love that. And I love the piece about taming shame. That is wonderful. And I have a copy of your book and it's absolutely exquisite. I am wowed at the level of photography in the book and the vulnerability of the women who showed up, all different sizes, shapes, types, who want, and I don't want to do a giveaway on the book, what's there, but I mean, it's masterful. The photography is beautiful. The women are just amazing, and how they just wanted to show up to support the message of body positivity. So could you tell, I know it's a little off topic, but could you tell our listeners a little bit about that particular book and the women who wanted to be part of it?
Absolutely. Really, in writing the book, that was the easiest part. The hardest part was getting people who wanted to participate in the photographic element of the book. And my goal for it was really to include women totally unedited, but also happy, because a lot of the books I've seen promoting unique body sizes are very like demure, and I really wanted to show the fun, the happiness that we can feel in our bodies, the joy that we can feel in our bodies. So my only requirement was that they were white, and they could wear makeup, they could not wear makeup. It was just to totally be themselves, do their hair how they wanted, and show up just honestly as their most authentic selves. And it was tricky to get women of a variety of different body types to be photographed in nothing but their underwear or a bathing suit. But I was able to get 75 women to do it. And it was just such a lovely experience. It was so unique to each individual woman. For some women, it was very healing. For some women, it was empowering. For some women, it was really scary, but they did it anyways. So it was just a fantastic experience to be able to capture so many different body types, but also personalities, and bring this book to life so that, young girls and women can have a piece of, media that, makes them feel good, because there's probably someone in there that reminds them of themselves.
Absolutely. And I love the book because, sometimes we see books on body positivity, and most of us are familiar with books that have photographs of very, you know, grim-faced models looking perfect in their,
Yes.
whether it's their bikini or their gown or their nothingness. And it's just so perfect. And most of us aren't, 6 foot tall or with, a weight
Blonde
of
hair, blue eyes,
blonde hair, blue eyes,
thin
with
stomach, big boobs, all that stuff.
thin stomach, big boobs, and this elegant build that is the traditional clothes hanger type that
Mm-hmm.
people who want to promote selling products, that's what they promote. And they want people of every age to look like this ideal 16 or 17-year-old, even when they're pretending that the model is 25 or 28.
Yes.
Often we are looking at models in their teens. And your book really takes away from that idealized image as being perfect, because when you see models in real life, they're not perfect either. They just happen
No.
to look good on camera, and all the tricks of that and the makeup and everything. And of course, some of them are extraordinarily beautiful, physically, but so is everyone else. We have just been trained that this brunette with the hazel eyes, or this person with the deep bronze skin and the high cheekbones and all of that is perfection.
Mm-hmm.
When instead of seeing imperfect bodies as being the ideal, because we are all imperfect. Our breasts are often
Yes.
not the same size. Our, stomachs are not meant to be perfectly flat. Our
Mm-hmm.
skin is often not perfect. Our curves, and it's really hard to be a woman in today's society, because sometimes curves are in, sometimes curves are out, sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
flat chest is in, sometimes huge chest is in. What's a woman to do when these standards are constantly moving? And even if the standards were static, it makes no sense to me that all women
Absolutely.
are meant to fit into this one mold, and that it's normal. And when you watch men, it was really funny. I happened to go see Barbie as an experiment because I was really interested in seeing it as not only being immersed in it, but I had given a lot of expert opinions on the Barbie movie to different magazines. And I loved so much of it, but there was the part when Barbie's coming out and she's in that perfect outfit, and everybody is looking at her as she's going down the beach, and you can see the men looking at her like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
what a perfect specimen. And that's not too different from what we often see in today's world. You can be out with people and there could be a man with a woman on his, walking next to him, and he's going, at the 16 or 17-year-old or 18, whatever, whoever's walking by. And we have created this idea in our society that that's normal and that's
Mhm.
okay. And yes, it's absolutely lovely to see lovely people of every gender and to appreciate beauty. And why can we not appreciate beauty of all types? Not
Yes.
just this one particular cookie cutter mold, rather than I find myself going out on walks and seeing, a 70-year-old woman going, oh my God, she's beautiful. Seeing a
Yes, I
child,
love that.
oh my God, she's beautiful. Seeing a mom with three kids crawling over her, right? Oh my God, she's beautiful. So I'm a big proponent of saying we're all imperfect.
Mhm.
Let's get rid of this idea as best we can that this mold, this one idea is the ideal that we should all, from birth forward, aspire as people of any gender, that we should aspire to look this way because who benefits?
Mhm.
The people who sell the products that push people into anorexia, bulimia, self-loathing, anxiety, depression. Anyway, you can tell this is a pretty big topic for me.
It
So, and for
is.
so many of my clients and so many of the people that I know. So, I'm going to take it to you, the expert, to really dive in here.
Absolutely. So, what you were talking about when you're walking down the street or Barbie's walking down the street and all the men are looking at her, that is something in our society that is called objectification. And that is that women are seen as objects of male desire. And we are brought up in this world as girls and young women to know that our worth is dependent on our appearance. So we really internalize that. And there's something called the male gaze, which is this feeling that we are the objects of male desire. And it's something that becomes so ingrained in us that we actually begin to self survey. And even if there is no man around, we are so hyper aware of how we are appearing. And that affects so many different things about how we feel about our bodies, our body image. So, you could be sitting alone, sitting down, and all you can be doing is thinking about the rolls that your skin are making in your body. And you look down and you're self-conscious. So you stand up a little bit straighter, you suck in. And these are things that are just so ingrained in our upbringing as girls and women that it is seen as normal, but it is not something that is normal. And that's why it's so important that we normalize normal bodies in this world so that we can start thinking of ourselves as so much more than the way we look.
Thank you. And I think it's so important just to pop in and mention here that men too suffer from not objectification in the way that women suffer from that as a constant. I see it as a constant threat for many women, that they feel I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to be accepted, I'm
Mhm.
not going to be loved. And that's where the threat piece comes in. Because if we don't feel loved and desirable, that makes us not feel very safe. But it's something that also affects men, where men are feeling. I was reading about the surge in men who are having their legs changed to
Mhm.
increase the length of their legs, and
Yes.
thigh implants, and what men
Mhm.
do in order to, they really take so many supplements sometimes if they're really into bodybuilding and making their body, not that we don't want to be strong and feel good in our skin, whatever that looks like, right? But sometimes we end up, men and women end up taking vast amounts of supplements and things that aren't healthy for us so that we can be either super thin and tiny or very big and gargantuan like a real
Yes.
man should be, when in
Mhm.
fact real men also come in all shapes and sizes.
Absolutely. And I think too, to add to that point is, I think because men are also taught that they are supposed to objectify women, they feel that their partner may need to reflect those attributes to make themselves appear more socially acceptable in our world. So I think also that's something that comes into play in this whole gender and body image, and as well, there's not enough studies pertaining to what men are going through in terms of body image. Obviously, my research is much more focused on women, but it is something that people have asked me some questions on, and there's not a whole lot out there because of toxic masculinity and this idea that it's like, no, we're just going to ignore that, that doesn't happen to men. But like you said, it's very much something that is also prevalent, and the whole world just needs to accept that imperfect bodies are the norm.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate, before we go to the listener's question, which is such a beautiful question and a very deep and unfortunately not uncommon flavor to that question. But when we look at the part where you said, I just can't not dive into it, that men are taught to objectify women.
Mm-hmm.
That could be its own podcast, but I'd love for you to touch on that, because we often miss that. And we look at men, and some women love being objectified by men. They love it. It's important to them. That's how they get a feel good surge. But what do you believe we do to teach our men to objectify women, so that listeners who don't want to objectify women can consciously let go of some of those behaviors for
Mm-hmm.
themselves and for the kids that they're raising?
I think, to be honest, it's almost sometimes what we're not doing. When we hear comments being made about women, and it's normalized, when a husband says to their wife, "Oh, you look fat in that," or, you should lose some weight. There needs to be more conversation going on there, where whether it's the woman or someone else is stepping in and saying, your body is nobody else's business, and fat is not a bad thing. We need to have these conversations with children at a young age, and it's so deeply embedded in the media that we consume as children, that it's our job as parents to become aware of these things and to start having those conversations with them. I know with my young children, I am constantly putting pause on TVs and movies and going, okay, what you just heard there, we're going to talk about that, because it's what's not being said in these things. We're just normalizing this behavior that men are the watchers of women, and women are their job is to get thin and look good and primp and stuff. It's all the things that we're not saying, in my opinion.
I think that's so beautifully put. And I believe, as a takeoff from that, that it's such a critical piece, because if we can start nipping this in the bud proactively, and you're right, a lot of times it begins not only in childhood, and that's a piece for parents to watch. What are the messages you're giving your child? That thin must be that you must be thin or nothing, that you must be perfect or nothing, and this is what perfect looks like. And watch the Disney movies and be one of those perfect princesses, except be a little bit more like this or that. And when we look at the messages that parents give children, which is where this begins, and the media that children are exposed to, without parents weighing in after that and saying, you don't look like Princess so and so, and that's okay. You are so
Mhm.
beautiful as you are. And what's important here is healthy, feeling good in your skin. That's what's important, not the weight on the scale, not the size that you're a size 0 or a size 2, but how do you feel in your size 8 jeans? How do they feel? You feel good. That's a good thing. And then looking at males and the messages, as you said, men, it's what we don't say. And I think of someone I know who I, you know, it used to be an issue where they'd say, "Oh my God, look at that woman with that big butt.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that." Or they'd, take a photograph of a woman as we were walking around. And I was like, no, no, this is objectification.
Yes.
No, don't do that in my presence. And I
Mhm.
hope that you learn from that and don't do it, when you're in other people's presence, because women are not objects. If a woman
Mhm.
chooses to become an object for her own, I mean, that's her choice. But
Mhm.
for as a whole, we want to be able to look at people not as though they are something to be ogled and consumed, but an individual who has rights.
Absolutely. And it's also about talking about things that are non physical qualities, especially with young children. It's really important to emphasize not just appearance based issues with young girls, for example. Talk about their smarts, talk about their kindness, talk about how funny they are. We tend to do that more with boys than we do with girls, and that sets a precedent as well for how we learn this objectification and the object versus the objectifier sort of mentality, because we are so focused on, oh, you're so cute, you little girl, let's do your hair and let's put you in a pretty dress, and those things are fine, but we also have to prioritize that there are more to young girls than that, and same with boys, right? They need to be exposed to being, you know, applauded for things that are not just, being tough or strong. They also need to be reminded that empathy and kindness and things like that are very important, and that will help.
You are so accurate. And I think of the many times I've been around parents who will say, both moms and dads, but often it's the dad who's saying, "Oh, my daughter, she's so beautiful. She's so beautiful. Mom, daddy's little princess, she's so beautiful." Or even as they age, "Oh, honey, you look so beautiful." And that, you're
Mm-hmm.
right, it perpetuates that idea that that's what's important, your beauty, rather than saying, "Oh, you are so creative. You are so
Mm-hmm.
strong. You are so talented. Look at what you're doing. Look at that cartwheel. Oh my goodness. What flexibility you have." And you're right, we don't do that with little boys. We don't put the little boy in his clothing at school and say, "Oh, you're a stud. You're so handsome. You look like Prince Charming." Instead, we say, "You're good at math. You're so strong. You're
Mm-hmm.
creative. You're all of these things." Again, we have to be careful, of course, of our verbiage with boys, because sometimes we promote, "Oh, you're tough. You're a real
Yes.
boy." And so
Yeah.
it's part of it is so important to look at the linguistics. I
Mm-hmm.
love that you paused on that. Okay, so let's take it. We could go for hours
I
here.
know we could.
Let's take it, and you have such good information, and I think the reason we could probably make 20 podcasts out of this is because our bodies are our homes.
Mm-hmm.
We wake up in them every day. We live with them every day. Kind of gives me some tears when we go to sleep with them. And if we
Yeah.
wake up not loving our skin and move through the day, not loving this beautiful home that we've been given, whatever its shape or size, and go to sleep loathing it, I mean, that's a terrible, terrible way to live. And yet
Mm-hmm.
it's so ubiquitous. And social media, I talk in my first book, Joy from Fear, about this voice of toxic comparison. The minute we start comparing ourselves to other people, I see there as being one good reason for comparing ourselves. And that's to say, "Wow, look at that person running, and they're a fast runner. And I like that. I'd like to learn to run like that." Or, "Wow, look at that color, that red color. I think next time I go and buy a sweater, I'd like a sweater that's that beautiful color, no matter, and have it on me," that kind of thing. But when we're comparing ourselves and saying, "Oh, look at that runner. They are svelte and thin and strong. And me, I'm ugly and fat. And da, da, da." Oh my goodness, that's toxic. And the same thing with the
Mm-hmm.
sweater. And you happen to be wearing a red sweater. And if I say, "Oh my goodness, I love that sweater, it's beautiful," I can just leave that be. Or if I really love that, then I can, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm not my eyes aren't like Emily's and my hair's not like Emily and I want Emily." No, no, no. Maybe if I get that sweater, I'll look like Emily. Well, but that's what advertisers
Mm-hmm.
do. They
Oh
trick us
yeah.
into thinking that by buying that dress, we are going to look like that model
And feel better.
and feel better and love ourselves. But then
Yes.
the sweater comes in the mail, we put it on and we don't look like the model. So now we
Mhm.
not only is our purse lighter, our bank account's lighter, but then our self-esteem is lighter because somehow we were sold the idea that by purchasing that makeup, that dress, those shoes, that skin fixer, that shampoo, whatever it is, that we are going to look like the person who sold it to us. It's
Mhm.
the advertisers are very tricky, and we
It's
are
very
somewhat
sneaky.
gullible when it
Very
comes to that.
sneaky.
Yeah, yeah. So, with the listener's question and the fact that she's really struggling with this pervasive sense of not being, sounds like she really lives in a lot of shame, and that her
Mhm.
body, it's not this stick thin ideal that her parents probably grabbed that from societal expectations, like, the rest of us. But what would you say to her?
I think, first off, I think it was Brene Brown who said the antidote to shame is talking about our shame and sharing it, right? I think she is doing the right thing by connecting with you and talking about this shame, because it loses so much power when we actually put it out there into the universe and start talking about it. The other thing is that it sounds like they're starting to recognize that their upbringing and the things that they've been told their whole life is not quite right. So for me, one of the biggest steps in becoming more body positive is really learning to think critically about these thoughts. So there's something that I love, and it is this idea that the first thought is what you're socially conditioned to think. And your second thought is what you get to choose to think. So really, it becomes almost a process when these thoughts pop up in your brain. And it takes a lot of practice to feel better. But the more you challenge these negative thoughts, the better you'll start to feel about yourself, because you realize that these thoughts are social conditioning. The other thing that's really important is reconnecting with your body and removing this idea that appearance and health are connected, because health can refer to what's going on up in your brain. It can refer to the things that you're fueling your body with, the things that you're doing to keep your body healthy. But really, we need to focus on joyful movement, intuitive eating. What are our bodies actually saying? And I think the thing with people who have struggled for so long is they're so disconnected from what their bodies actually need. It's really finding that reconnection, whether it starts through self-care or doing something you actually enjoy. If you hate going to the gym, don't go to the gym, go for a walk, do something enjoyable, and separate this idea that you need to look a certain way by doing certain things. You really have to rediscover yourself and find out what makes you happy.
I love that because you make it so simple that when we tend to look at our thoughts, so let's just give an example here and work with me on it, please. So somebody, our listeners, looking at an image on social media, she
Mhm.
felt fine. She had a good breakfast and she scrolls through social media, sees bombshell bikini body
Mhm.
there and goes, that's not me.
Mhm.
I am not that stick thin. I don't have those abs. I don't have that butt. I don't have that face. I don't have that size. Maybe I'm 5'8" and that girl's 5'6" or whatever it is. I want to look like her. So what you're saying is, let's just pause. Let's look at that thought, which in the thought, if we distill it, is essentially, I should be ashamed. I should not feel good about myself because I don't look like this image that
Mhm.
happened to pop up on my screen. And more of those images will pop up because, social media learns and it knows that I'm watching more of these, so it's going to give me more of these. So well, that's actually another tip. stop looking at those images because
Yes.
they'll stop
Yes.
giving them to you.
Social media detox, right?
Social media detox. So then how would you ask her to change all of those so that we have at least three negative thoughts right there?
Yes.
So she'll become not critical of herself, but a
Mhm.
critical thinker, an observer of those thoughts.
Mhm.
And then she can choose thought replacement. And would you share three thought replacements, please?
Absolutely. The first thing too, when a negative thought pops up, is I like to ask the question: is this thought true? And is it true all of the time? Right. So it takes you to a place where you can remember feeling good in your body, because we all have one moment, at least one moment in our lives where we felt good, whether it was wearing a nice pair of jeans or a nice dress that felt good on you. Bring yourself into that moment, and then you can really start to replace those thoughts with something else. So a replacement thought was, I felt really strong in my body that day when I did a 20-minute bike ride around the block. And it was so fun that I got to experience seeing so many different sights. Again, it's taking that negative thought, turning it into something positive, but also reminding yourself that appearance is not the only important thing. You're living your life. You're focused on other things. You're not focused on your body in that moment. Another thought could be, I'm not the only one that feels insecure. Sometimes I wonder if this person has ever felt insecure as well. This is their highlight reel. I don't get to see the negative side of things. So I know that she's not better than me, or that they're not better than me. And, let me think about a time where I felt really good. I felt really amazing when I got an A+ on my test last week, and I felt so good, and I posted it on my social media, and that was a really proud moment. And I know that I am more than my body in that moment. Another option, let's think of something. It felt really good the other day when I was able to walk in to the library and donate some books that I hadn't read in a while. And it felt really good to be able to move my body and do something good for this world and this community while I was doing it. My body really did a great thing that day, and I feel really good about being kind. And I know that kindness is more important than the way I look.
So beautifully done. Because, I mean, those are great because those are things we can all find those moments. I felt so great. So we see that bikini body and then you go, oh, I felt so great in my body when I was able to give my 5-year-old this big hug and they hugged me back.
Mhm.
I felt so great when I was able to go visit my mom and I mean, I can see we can just keep taking this to, hey, let's be positive about the gifts our body gives us. The
Yes.
body, the fact that we're breathing, that we're seeing right now, that we're able to talk, that we have these brains that are working in amazing ways. So one of your big pieces I'm getting is that let's just stop the huge, intense focus on appearance. We are so much more than the exterior of this beautiful body we are in.
You got it.
Oh, I love this. And I love listeners, if you are not watching on video, behind Emily is this beautiful, luscious lips with these perfectly imperfect white teeth. And the woman in this, well, we don't know it's a woman. It could be a man with lipstick on. Anyway, they're just big lips, but the teeth are biting the lip.
Mhm.
Could you, I mean, to me, it speaks volumes about that when we're biting our lip because
Mhm.
we are anxious, nervous,
Mhm.
shamed,
Shamed, yeah.
apprehensive. So let's dive into, and I'm seeing this image is just so, big, lovely, but big, and the power of shame to erode self-esteem,
Mhm.
erode self-confidence, erode self-love, erode the ability to show up as an empowered individual on the planet. that we want to start looking at shame, which is, and listeners, if you don't know the difference, embarrassment and shame are two different things. Embarrassment is, oops, I did something in public, I fell down, or I just did something funny at work that I'm not really proud of because everybody saw me spill the coffee, whatever it was. That's embarrassment. It's fleeting, generally tends to go away. Shame is the sense of, I am defective as a human being.
Mhm.
I am ashamed of who I am. And this sense of shame, which is often perpetuated by expectations from others, from society, and from the self, often results in so many forms of many types of mental health issues, whether it's
Mhm.
substance abuse, alcoholism, eating disorders, because we do something to try to quell that voice that is saying, you are not enough. You are not pretty enough, thin enough, smart enough, good enough. So we do things to try to get that nasty voice to shut up.
Mhm.
But when we act out in ways that aren't healthy, what happens? That voice of shame gets louder. And I agree that it's important for us to talk about shame, but I go one step further to say we want to talk about shame with people who respect discussions about shame. Because if we're trying to talk about our shame to someone who's used to objectifying women or objectifying anybody, we may end up coming away from that discussion if we're not strong on our feet yet, feeling worse. So we want to have really wise use of who we share these vulnerabilities with, these beautiful kernels of who we are and our journey.
Mhm.
So go ahead. Please share about shame and its effect on women.
Absolutely. So, the definition of shame I like to use is it's the fear of being ourselves. And shame is so deeply rooted in the evolution of humans. At one point, we very much needed shame to keep us alive and in society, right? It stopped us from going off and doing things that went against the grain that, we all needed each other to stay alive. Today, shame is often used as a tool of manipulation in marketing. It is used to control how people act, getting them to buy certain things. It's also something that has been passed down in us, and we don't always often realize that shame is something that we can get out of. If you were body shamed as a child by your mother, you may grow up to be a mother who body shames your daughter. It's one of those things that we have to really become aware of and challenge it in order to make it go away. And shame does lose its power, like we said before, when we talk about it. And like you said, we have to talk about it to the right people. So whether that's talking to a therapist or someone who understands what you're going through, someone who's been through certain things, that is absolutely going to help, because the more we hide, the more we stay away from people, the more harm it really does in terms of us being able to get out of the deep end with that. So as women, it's so important that we talk to each other about things, the things that we do to our bodies to appear a certain way. I remember growing up and it was like, oh, girls don't do this and girls don't do that. I don't do that. But we all know you do those things because they're normal human things. So when we talk about that, when we normalize those things, especially for women, it makes it okay to be ourselves.
Thank you. So let's pivot for a minute because we know for this listener, her question is that the parents did shame her. They did, although their intentions were likely very good. They wanted her to be healthy and
Fit in,
didn't
maybe. Yeah.
they didn't know other ways of approaching the issue. So what about someone where they choose unconsciously a partner, whether they're dating, a love partner, a friend group, something, where that shaming continues
Hmm.
in overt or subtle ways. So for imagine a romantic partner who says, "Oh, well, aren't your breasts a little too big?" Or
Hmm.
"Isn't your belly a little too curvy?" Or "Isn't your butt too big?" Or "Your calves too big?" Whatever it is, right? What would you recommend for that person, other than telling the individual who's shaming them to stop it
Hmm.
and please go do some self-work so that you can stop objectifying me and other people.
Yes.
So what else other than that straightforward response, like, no, this is not okay, this is not how we conduct ourselves? What else would you recommend?
Absolutely. It's a big responsibility to take on what someone else is doing in your relationship. It's really hard. And I think finding a source of validation for how you're feeling is super important. Whether it's a friend, a therapist, you need to feel validated in knowing that their behavior is not okay. It's not your fault. That is a really important part of getting out of the shame hole. The other thing is you really need to rebuild and build up your own self-esteem, your own confidence, and that is going to look a little bit different for each person. It could just be dressing comfortably for some people. For other people, it's writing gratitude lists, focusing on the things that you do like about yourself. Again, we can go back into thinking critically, challenging sort of some of these thoughts when they come up. If someone, the same way we would if we were calling ourselves these things in our mind, we can go, well, is this true all the time? Does it matter? Why does my breast size matter in this world to my worth? um but it's a challenging thing because it's a really individual struggle. It's going to depend on your upbringing. It's going to depend on the relationship that you have. If it was just a simple, slip of tongue, social conditioning type thing that the partner said, and you go, hey, like that's not cool, and if they're willing to accept, that they did something wrong, obviously your journey is going to be different than someone who constantly is shaming their partner in a way, whether they have narcissistic tendencies or whatever it is. Your journey is going to look a lot different. So really the important things here are that you find a source of validation that's not okay, that shaming is not okay. And you start talking about the shame process and things you can do to build up your confidence, to build up your self-esteem and make you feel better. And sometimes, unfortunately, it means, breaking ties with people that make comments like that. I know I've talked to lots of women where they had to cut moms out of their lives, or limit the amount of time that they spent with certain people because they wouldn't accept that it wasn't okay to talk like that to them. So you have to do whatever you need to do to protect you.
And I love that you said that. And two pieces just to add on. By standing up for yourself, listeners, and having strong boundaries around this negative talk, you become that force of change, and your body feels it. Your body feels it, your mind feels it. When you say, no, 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 this is not okay. My body is my body. And so I think that that's a really important part, that sense of empowerment and strength that comes from, in a very kind and respectful way, saying, no, this is not okay. This behavior, I don't know where the heck you got it from, but lose it. If you want to be around me, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And for your own good, for your own self-growth, it might be something you want to look at, because society, we've come a long way, baby, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
that old saying, we have come a long way, baby, and we truly are. We are making strides
mm-hmm,
across all genders, and especially with women, in saying what's appropriate, what's acceptable,
mm-hmm.
and what's not. and having nice lines around that. So kudos to the Me Too movement, because I really think it
Mhm.
started shifting things in the direction it needed to go. I think the other really important piece that you brought up that I loved, if a partner, a mom, a friend, anyone is saying, oh, you should look this way, or I'd prefer if you looked that way, have a discussion about it. Say,
Mhm.
why are you saying this? Like, where does this come from? So not only do you not get on the defensive and feel badly about yourself, which is often where we go to, we immediately sink into shame. I'm not good enough. But then it's like, let's get curious. Let's
Yes.
talk about what is this ideal image of a woman? And you might come to realize that the mom or the partner or whoever it is has something stuck in their mind about, you know, their 16-year, when they were 16 years old, the love of their life, or the mom may have been shamed, whatever it is. And that
Right.
image of what a perfect woman, or maybe a Playboy model stuck up on the wall, poster from
Mhm.
childhood. And so, okay, that's there. Now let's get some other images in there about what a healthy, imperfect woman looks like, because we are all imperfect. We just need to get more images out there
Yes,
other
yeah.
than the
That
one.
is the biggest thing I think of
Yes.
all. If we saw more people that look like regular people out in the world, I mean, we see 10,000 ads a day. Like, so if we saw more people that looked like normal people, I don't think we would be facing a lot of these things that we are facing. It would change so much. And it's starting. It's starting.
It's starting. And Emily, just one last piece is, I think that it's important for us to realize that even those models that we call perfect, when trends change, they are no longer perfect. They are, and without the makeup and and yes, they may have this certain physique and standard, and I'm sure they're all lovely, wonderful human beings, but perfect is not one thing. We
Mhm.
are, and so even those models are imperfect.
It's a
So
moving target.
it's a
And
moving
it's done
target.
so that we keep consuming.
Yes, and we are all imperfect, and that is a good thing. We are all quirky. We all look different from each other. We all have unique fingerprints. Let's celebrate that rather than shaming. And if somebody wants to do something because they want to do it for their physical appearance, or for the way they want to buy a lotion, or do this or do that, sure, do it for you. Just
Mhm.
don't be doing it in the quest to be loved or
Mhm.
accepted. Because if you're with the right people, they will love you and accept you and adore you as you are. They will want you to be healthy, mind you, but someone who truly loves you isn't going to want you to be bulimic or
Mhm.
anorexic
Mhm.
in
Being
order.
fat can be way healthier than thin. It's
Abs-
it, you can't measure health by looking at someone.
by looking at someone. Emily, thank you so much for your time today. I could keep talking to you because you have such wonderful information. And by the way, I do want to say your book isn't just pictures. Your book, there is a lot of discussion in there. Heartfelt, heartfelt discussion that is easy to read. It's not textbook
Mhm.
style. It's
No, I mean, I wanted it so easy to consume that the youngest, our young girls could really go, oh, I can relate to this. This makes sense.
Yes, and I'm not a young girl, and I surely relate to it. So
Yeah,
well done, you.
thank you.
Well done. Where can our listeners find you, Emily?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram at Real Happy Daughter or Bootstrapped Woman, where I talk about ethical marketing.
Very good. Okay, one more question. Why the happy daughter handle?
So originally, the book, when I first proposed it to the publisher, it was called Average Girl. And then we were going to call it Real Happy. And, I really just want to create a world full of real happy daughters. So that's where the handle came from. And then we changed the book name to Body Positive. But you know what? It had stuck, and I just felt like it had such a good significance. So we kept it as Real Happy Daughter.
Well, I love that explanation. And I know I said we're done, but I just want to give a nod because we talked about it a bit, but body positivity, could you, and body neutrality, which is, they're two
Yes.
different things. Could you give us just a brief definition in your words of both and how they complement each other? They're not at war with each other. They can actually complement each other.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think, whatever you want to call it, we're all fighting to for body acceptance, right? So body positivity is really just this idea that all bodies are good bodies, that they're worthy of love, respect, and that all bodies are beautiful. So with body neutrality, the only difference really is that it's sort of an in-between place. It's also the idea that your body doesn't determine your worth, but it sort of takes away the pressure of having to feel that you need to love the way your body looks. So they're very, very similar. It's all about body acceptance, and whether you're working towards just being okay in your skin, or if you're working towards loving your body, whatever you pick is totally fine and totally okay.
And that's a perfect way for us to close. It's all about body acceptance, whichever flavor you like, go for it. Oh, thank you so much, Emily. It's been a joy and such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanly.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Manly wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.